You're very welcome to this Heritage Week talk on the 22nd of August about the Heritage Council funded project Swift Conservation at Schools in County Mayo, building swift nest boxes into the walls of schools. I'll cover a little bit of information about swifts initially, just for anyone that may not be familiar with the swift. Why we need to help swifts, about the nest box projects, the type of nest box being used for these built-in projects, the process and how we identify the schools. So the common swift is the only swift that comes to Ireland, and they arrive here usually at the nest site around the first week of May, and by September they've normally left Ireland. So they come here to breed, which is extremely important. They do not breed in Africa where they spend the winter, and they have just one brood. So that would normally be a brood of either 1 to 3 chicks. They don't usually have more than 3 chicks, and they will spend from around October through to March in Africa, and then will gradually make their way back up to Ireland. They live a life of almost permanently on the wing, so the only time that they land is at the nest site to breed. So when they're in Ireland, that's the only time that the breeding birds will land, and the rest of the time they spend their life on the wing 24 hours a day, which means they sleep on the wing, and they do this by closing down half of their brain when they're up at altitude. They collect nest material on the wing, which is feathers, grass, dandelion clocks or willow catkins, anything that they can catch in flight. So if you have a nest with sticks in it, then it wouldn't be a swift's nest. They feed on the wing, feeding on aerial-borne insects such as spiders and midges, sometimes bee drones, and they will mate on the wing, so only landing to breed, to lay the eggs and feed the young. And the way the adults feed the young is they collect a ball of food. So many birds will actually feed their chicks with 1 or 2 insects at a time. You may have noticed this with swallows, but the swift actually collects a ball of several hundred insects, and this is called a bolus, and it feeds the bolus to the chick. And you'll see in the top left-hand photo that the chick has its head over the adult's head, so that it can actually the adult can regurgitate the bolus. And on the top right you have an adult bird with a bolus in its throat, and it's just about to land in a nest site. If the food gets a little bit scarce in a time of bad weather, then the chicks can go into a sort of torpor, so slow down their metabolism. And they usually fledge within 6 to 7 weeks, so they're normally around 46 days old, which is actually twice as long as birds like swallows and martins. And the reason is that they actually need to build up and be extremely physically fit and well fed, because once they fledge from the nest, they're going to be flying for at least a year, maybe 2 or 3, until they find their own nest site. And here you have a little video of swift chicks being fed by the adult. Therein comes the adult, and you see immediately the chick has its head over the adult's head, and the bolus is now being regurgitated, and the other chick is trying to get half of that bolus as well. And you can see that it's quite a physical affair for the adults feeding the young ones. This is from the Nestbox project at GMIT in Castlebar in County Mayo, which is live streamed during the breeding season. So where do swifts nest naturally? Well, they do nest in some cliff faces and quarry faces, and that was probably the original places that they nested. But now they nest in our buildings, and they're in many old stone buildings, and there's quite a few churches with swift nest sites in. So they tend to be older buildings. The more modern buildings don't have the crevices and nooks and crannies where swifts need to enter buildings so that they can make their nest inside the building. And unfortunately, a lot of the old buildings are either being renovated or demolished without anyone realising that there would have been swifts nesting in there. And so swift nest sites are lost, and this is very traumatic for the birds because they nest in the same location for life, and the loss of the nest site can actually mean that they don't ever find a replacement nest site and may die before they do find somewhere else. The other issue is that the sites are not fully protected. They're only protected during the breeding season. So nest sites can be destroyed in the non-season, and there's no full protection for them. You can see here that this is a building in Sligo that had been wrapped in, the scaffolding had been wrapped up while the building was being renovated. And you'll see here that a swift approaches there to try and get into what was its nest site. You can see there it goes approaching again, and this is what would have happened throughout the season, that the birds would be trying to get into their existing nest site. Now the good news at this nest site is that there were actually artificial nest cavities put into the building, and the swift colony was not lost from that building. So the swifts are what we call hidden nesters because you won't see the nest. They enter the building through a little hole. You can just see here a little hole where the swift is leaving. And here you have that nest of grass and feathers, but there are no droppings underneath the swift's nest. So the hole is small, so very little sign that there's anybody entering in that nest site, and no droppings, so no mess, nothing to give you an indication of a nest site. And usually the only way you know is when you actually see a bird enter that nest site. So up until 2018, I was using externally fitted nest boxes at locations around County Mayo. We have about 45 nest box projects of externally mounted boxes, and they're great. The advantage of them is that you can fix them to any building, and the nest boxes used at GMIT with the cameras fitted, which are on the bottom picture, they are a model called the Schwegler 17A, and they have a triple cavity. The disadvantage with externally mounted boxes is that they can deteriorate and need maintenance, so they need to be painted. Plus, they can easily be removed, which is a disadvantage for a bird like a swift, which nests in the same location for life. So if you have to replace nest boxes, you really need to replace them in exactly the same spot, because swifts will be looking for that particular entrance hole for the duration of its breeding life. The other slight problem with external boxes is they can sometimes be damaged or vandalised. So this led me on to building in nest boxes into new buildings, and the first project where I managed to do this was in 2015 in Westport Town Hall in County Mayo, and this was a project supported by the County Council. And it was so successful because the first pair of swifts actually took up residence just 1 year later, which is much faster than I'd ever experienced in any of the external boxes. And all of those nest boxes, all 12, are now being used. So we then proceeded to try and get funding for other built-in nest box projects, and I realised that many schools in Mayo were having extension work, extended building work onto the buildings. So I started approaching them, and up to early 2020, the following buildings have had nest boxes been built into them, and they have been funded through grants that I've obtained through Mayo County Council and through private donations. And the advantage of nest box projects in schools is that they are great for raising awareness amongst the children, but they're also very good for green schools because they work very well for the biodiversity element of the green schools. So in 2020, I applied for a grant from the Heritage Council and was awarded that grant actually in 2021 to carry out projects by the boxes in 2021. So it was funding to buy 80 nest boxes that could then be fit into school projects as they came up. So the situation at the moment is that we're having 6 in St Mary's National School, apologies for the typo there, in Partry, and 7 in Key National School, 16 at Ball Secondary School, 12 at Mayo Abbey, and then we have Newport National School and Ballinrobe Community School, and so on. So the way that I identified the projects was to go onto the Department of Education website and look for major building projects and devolve scheme. So there are 2 schemes of building projects for schools. One is actually large scale projects and the other is smaller scale projects. So you need to look for both of those on the Department of Education building works section. And you'll then, as you can see on the right hand side, there's a list of schools and it's by county, and you can see what stage they're at, whether they're at planning stage or whether they're brief stage or whether they're actually on site. And the nest box model that was selected was the Woodstone Swift Nest Box Deep, and the word deep is important because they have another model that's smaller. The advantage of this box is it's quite attractive price-wise. It simply replaces a cement block, so it is easy to work with. The disadvantage is that the entrance hole size can be unreliable, so you'd need to modify it with filler to make sure that it doesn't exceed 30 millimeters. So we normally like an entrance hole size of 29 millimeters by 65, and no more than 30 millimeters by 65. The Woodstone box is also a little bit longer in length than the Schwegler 17A, and this is important. The length of the box is important because of the swift chicks. When they're exercising, they need to spread their wings out fully in order to be able to do the push-ups, and a swift's wing when it's close to fledging is 16 centimeters from shoulder to tip of wing. So when they've got their wings stretched out, you kind of need that, you need at least 32 centimeters, and the inner dimensions of the Woodstone are 38 centimeters. So I bought these through a company called Vivara Pro, also known as CJ Wildlife in the UK. It's not possible to buy them directly in Ireland, so you have to go through the UK. And the one important part I mention about this box as well is that inside it has a little nest concave, and the nest concave is in the floor and in the ceiling, so you can't put the nest box in the wall upside down. It doesn't matter which way up the nest box is installed, so long as the hole is on the outside of the wall. So you pay Vivara Pro excluding VAT, because when they're imported into Ireland, you have to pay the Irish VAT of 23% through a customs agent. They're duty exempt, so all you're paying is the VAT. And Vivara Pro require a minimum order of €1,500, and in this you get free shipping. So the total cost of each box for me was €28.16. You can buy them through other outlets in the UK. There's nhbs.com, it's one of them, but the boxes from them are €38 per box plus shipping. Placement of the boxes is, I prefer to place them in a horizontal line. You definitely don't want to put boxes one below the other, or you could risk getting bird collision on when the birds are entering and leaving the box. And you want to have boxes over 4 meters of height, not directly above a big plate glass window, although ordinary windows are okay. preferably not south facing, although with built-in boxes it's not quite as critical as it is with externally placed boxes, where you really don't want to put them on a south facing wall because they'll heat up. And you want a free aspect, so you don't want any other buildings or trees blocking the nest boxes, because the swifts need to be able to have a free flight out and in to the boxes. And then not near the bright spotlights or waving flags. Bright spotlights that are shining onto walls or down from walls can actually blind the birds when they're entering and leaving the boxes. So what you need to remember as well is that we don't want the hole size to get altered during the rendering process, and we don't want any render inside the hole. So I provide a little foam shape that is fitted into the entrance hole, and that little shape stays there for the duration of the scudding and the rendering. And once the rendering's done, that can be removed, and you still have your perfect entrance hole size of 29-30 by 65 millimeters. So this is one school that was finished using a grant from Mayo County Council, and it was operating in 2021. And the lighting that's near those swift nest boxes is actually diffuse lighting, so it's not an issue for them. And the call system is located just here, which is fine because it's near enough to the boxes. You want the birds to find the boxes on both walls. The hopper here, you have to be careful with hoppers on downpipes and make sure that there is a top to the hopper, either a solid or a mesh top, to prevent any birds from falling in, be it swifts or any other bird species. So this is one of our Heritage Council projects, and it's Partree National School, and this is quite it's a first for me, which is to build in swift boxes into a brick building. And you can see from the right hand photo that the block actually extends a little bit into the wall cavity, but there's still plenty room to put insulation. And we place a marine speaker in the hole. This project is very close to completion, and we'll be placing this waterproof black marine speaker into the hole and running the speaker cable into the classroom where there'll be the amplifier to play the calls. And I buy these speakers from CPC Farnell Island. Another project we've got close to completing is Key National School in Ballina. And again, you can see the side aspect where the box is, there is plenty room there to put some insulation. And the call system here will be going just above these boxes here. We'll be putting an externally mounted call system probably on this school. One school that's going to have boxes built in probably next week is Ball Secondary School. And there we're going to put 16 boxes, and there are swifts nesting in the town nearby, so this will be a great permanent nest site for the swifts. And the beauty of building in nest boxes as opposed to externally fitted nest boxes is that the nest boxes are going to be there for the life of the building, and that hopefully would be at least 50 years or more. So you're providing a very long-term nest site solution for swifts. We've other projects that are very close. A lot of projects are being a little bit delayed by COVID, but we have plans for Newport National School. They already have occupied external nest boxes, so they are very keen to provide more help for the swifts in Newport, and are keen to have nest boxes built into the new walls. And Mayo Abbey National School, likewise, the work should be starting there anytime now. Another element to the project was to install cameras into an existing project. So we chose Charlestown National School, which had swifts already nesting in a Genesis nest box, and we replaced that nest box with a Schwegler 17A and installed 3 cameras. And you can see on the left photo there that we had the pair came and nested in their nest site, because the beauty is that the Genesis and the Schwegler nest box are very similar in size, dimensions and everything. So the Swift came back and went into the Schwegler box. It wasn't at all perturbed because the entrance hole was exactly where the previous entrance hole had been. So you can find sources of information on how to build in nest boxes. We have on swiftconservation.ie, there is a document giving you great detail on building in the Woodstone Swift Nest Box Deep and also the Schwegler 17A. I must just say that the Woodstone nest boxes are quite readily available. You can usually have them a few weeks after you've ordered them, whereas with the Schwegler it's several months to order them, and there are slight complications with bringing them into Ireland, so you have to phone NHBS about those, but there are details on the document on the website. There are also details about attraction call systems on swiftconservation.ie. The Birdwatch Ireland have a booklet, Saving Swifts publication, and you can get a copy of that from them, or there's a PDF copy either on their website or the swiftconservation.ie website. And then, of course, in the UK, you've got swiftconservation.org and Action for Swifts. So thank you very much for listening to this presentation, and if you've got any queries at all, then you can email me at swiftconservationireland@gmail.com. And also after this presentation there will be a Q&A session for the Heritage Week Day of 22nd of August, and I'd like to thank the Heritage Council for supporting this project and helping Mayo's Swifts by providing 80 permanent homes for Swifts in County Mayo. Thank you.